What's up, everyone? Welcome to Bilbrons and Dragons. I'm your host, Bilbron Bafflestone. So today we're having another battle report for my Moldbron Dowlock Stone build, which I've been playing in a Westmarch server called the Forged Concordance, which I highly recommend, and if you want to check it out, I put all of the relevant information in the video description below, so feel free to join me there and we can adventure together. Today's adventure was called The Forest Job, The Legend of Paul Bundy. And this was a very exciting adventure for me because it was my first steel mission. I just made 5th level, and I just did a video talking about the choices I made and how I look at 5th level, so feel free to check that out. That link will also be in the video description. But I was told that the combats are like a lot more difficult at the steel level, so I was really excited to see what kind of enemies that I was going to be facing this time. So I approached the job board, and a little trepidatious because, you know, I'm a new steel, so it's like, you know, entering, a new high school or something. And I met Alexis, who is this massive Leonin. He's a devotion paladin, and he was putting a team together, and I was like, can I be on it? And, a little bit of quizzing. He's like, all right, you can come with. I was like, okay, cool. And then he met a friend of his, Epti Stormweaver, who was another Leonin, this time a battle master. And these guys are clearly bros. They have clearly worked together in the past. It was actually really cool to see them like back to back, really well synergized and working well together. At one point, Epti did like a bait and switch maneuver, which was just so perfectly timed. It like got Alexis out of danger when he was at kind of relatively low hit points and swapped their positions, and he had a weaker enemy, and then he also got an AC bump, and he had maneuvering strike, and so yeah, those guys were like really good marshals. And then we filled out the team with Dax Derringer, who was a human artificer ranger crossbow expert with sharpshooter. So this was a pretty good team. We had Alexis and Epti as kind of the core of our offense, and then Dax was supporting, and then I, of course, was rolling out my summons and Fargar, and it was good. And we needed it because the battles were pretty tough. So the job was for Paul Bundy, clearing out a forest in an area to the west near Halcyon. And so first we had to arrange passage. So we headed down to Tearsfall, and I used a contact of mine to point me in the right direction of Captain. And we ended up on a pretty famous ship that Bilbron had actually heard of as he was growing up, stories about. Captained by the famed, or infamous, Captain Delar, who ran a really cool, just ran a real tight ship and had a cool crew, and had like this little office in this hidden door behind a bar. It was very cool, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We got passage and made it to Halcyon and then to the Princeton Hills where the job was, and it turns out it was a hex crawl. And I'd never done a hex crawl before. In fact, I never even really heard of the concept. So that was cool. It's a different way to play it, and I thought it offered some interesting elements. Like we had to watch our time a lot, and scouting was a big deal. And so we had to basically clear out these hexes. We were given magical chainsaws, so we were actually literally out there doing the lumberjack thing. But in each square, we searched it first. Dax went out supported by Fargar, and Dax was just like crazy good on his perception and search rolls. He rolled like under 20 one time. All of the rest of the times were above 20. The DM was pulling his hair out pretty much at how well we were getting scouting information. And so a lot of these squares were relatively empty, and we would go in to clear them, and then there might be like an environmental hazard. Like there was this mud fall that did a lot of damage to my riding horse. And once we found a smuggler's hold that was full of these crates of liquor. And at first we were all excited because, of course, we were hoping for, gold or something easily liquidated. But everybody got disappointed when they saw all these crates of liquor, because there was like no way that we can take all of that stuff back with us, right? Wrong, because Bill Braun's got Genie's vessel. So we were able to gather it all up, and I was able to like kind of grab as much of it as I could and then pop it into the Genie's vessel, and we managed to actually get about 70% of the contraband, and that gave us a nice little gold boost at the end. So that was a nice touch. But some of these hexes did include combat, and so we had 4 combats that day. And man, they were pretty tough. 2 of them in particular were very tough. One of them being our first encounter. So we approached a clearing, and it was full of statues, and it turns out these statues were gargoyles. And so 6 gargoyles. And gargoyles can fly and have a 60-foot move speed, and their main tactic was to grapple people with one of their 2 attacks and then fly straight up with them. And this table had a table rule that there was no minimum or no maximum on falling damage. So when I first saw that table rule, I was like, that's not going to come into play, is it? And then in our first battle, I immediately see that we've got grappling flyers doing this shit, and I was like, oh my god, because they're tough. They're not easy to kill, and they just keep flying you up and up and up. Wow. So that was an immensely dangerous setup, but it turned out to be a fairly easy win for us because of Summon Shadow Spawn, which I have reskinned as Summon Stone Golem, and it was amazing. Dreadful Scream was so huge that even though they were pretty widely spread out on the battlefield, I was able to get all but one of them, and all but one of those failed their save, so they were feared. And then I maneuvered my Shadow Spawn, even though it took a couple of opportunity attacks in the process, to a point where those feared ones could not approach. So even though they were doing the grapple, fly, drop thing, it was only like those 2 at first, while the others literally couldn't do anything. It couldn't get close at all. And then as they started to making their end of turn saves, they started like flying in and doing it as well, but it totally kept things manageable. And so even though it was a difficult combat, and they still were able to drop Alexis like 3 times from 30 feet, and they weren't dropping them on purpose. We were killing them as they were doing that because we knew that if they got really high, forget about it. And that was really an amazing performance out of the Stone Golem / Shadow Spawn for its very first battle. I think it won that battle for us. That could have been really, really bad. If all 4 of us had gotten swarmed by 6, well, all 3 of them, because of course I was off the field. Pretty much every battle I would just ride off 120 feet on my riding horse, and then operate through Fargar. Worked like a charm. So we killed them. Then we had a second battle that was in this graveyard, and I was expecting undead, but nope, it actually turns out that these miniature purple worms would pop up out of the ground and attack us, and they had a pretty significant poison attack. So they weren't the big infamous one, of course, just like little babies or whatever, but still pretty formidable. And that was when Epti did that really cool bait and switch maneuver, and we managed to win. It was a tough battle, not one of the hardest battles of the day, but still formidable. The third battle was crazy. It took place in this area where there was a giant crater where we presumed a giant meteor had made it, and it was against 3 creatures: a gargoyle, another gargoyle, a rock-like creature that could throw boulders and turn into a pinball and roll around, and it was literally rolling back and then forth. So I guess it got an extra attack bonus for that, and it was it hit like a truck. It actually killed my riding horse by throwing a boulder that did 43 damage. And so, yeah, poor Pete, I had to replace him with Fred. But, yeah, I'm glad that it hit him and not somebody else. And at first I tried a charisma-based solution because it seemed like they were open to talking. So I was trying to talk to them, and so we ended up playing this game of throwing boulders back and forth. But they were way stronger than us, and I was like, can Alexis and Epti sub in for the athletic stuff? Because not my department. But even they were not strong enough and were struggling with these boulders. And at one point, Epti, who has these ventilating lungs, used a gust of wind to try and help move the boulder. And I guess they consider that cheating, and they got aggro, and we rolled initiative. And oh my god, this, I forgot the third guy. So there was this weird misshapen fey creature. It looked kind of like an ugly dwarf, but it could cast spells. It cast fairy fire, it cast hold person, and then this rock thing was smashing people for just huge damage. And then of course a gargoyle, who is, doing the fly and drop thing. So that was a super tough battle where the gargoyles are poison immune, and the rock thing was poison immune, and that's not good for Fargar. But Fargar did just smash the fey creature, and that worked out. And then Epti and Alexis were able to handle the rock creature, and Dax pretty much handled the gargoyle, and that worked out. But man, that was a dangerous combat. And in fact, the DM said that lots of people die here, and one of the players said, yeah, I tried this once before, and my character died here. So I was pretty pleased with our performance there. We managed to win that, and nobody died. And then we had another battle, and at first I was really excited because the thing looked scary as hell. It looked like a giant snake skeleton thing. And we engaged it, and it died instantly. So I didn't even get a chance to really see what it did. Mostly because Dax blew up on it with an epic 75 damage attack sequence or something like that. So yeah, that was the 4 battles, and we made it back to the logging camp where we had set out, because we had a time limit. If we were there at nightfall, we would have basically got swarmed and eaten by vampires, because I guess the Dracula equivalent lives in this neighborhood. I guess he's engaged in some kind of war with a unicorn. There's definitely a bigger picture going on here that I just have briefly touched the surface of. But yeah, we made it back. Mission success. We actually cleared out quite a bit of the forest. We got the extra loot because of the smuggler's hold that we, took all that liquor from. And so we made it down to Halcyon, and we found a connection to liquidate that stolen liquor. And then we caught a ship back to the TFC HQ to collect our mission badges for a success. And I made pretty good gold off of that mission. I made 285, I think, all told, which is great because I needed it because I just bought that Pyro Converger. And now I don't have much gold left. So that's it. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching. This has been Build Bronze and Dragons. I'm your host, Bill Bafflestone. See you next time.